Daniel opened his eyes slowly, the dim lights above him flickering in and out like the weak pulse of a dying heart. His head felt heavy, his body stiff as though he had been lying in the same position for years. A faint metallic hum echoed through the room, mixed with the low hiss of oxygen flowing through vents. He blinked several times trying to adjust his vision, and then he froze. There, just beside him, was someone or something lying still. At first, in his haze of confusion, he thought it was another human crew member. But as his sight cleared, he noticed details that were impossible to mistake. Her skin was smooth and silver, as if touched by liquid metal, and faint glowing lines spread across her arms, pulsing softly in rhythm with her slow breathing. Her face looked peaceful, almost human, yet slightly too sharp, too otherworldly. She was not one of his kind. She was alien. Daniel sat up quickly, his heart pounding hard against his chest. He glanced around the room, trying to remember where he was. It was a stasis chamber, one of many on his research vessel. The walls were scorched. Wires hung loose from panels, and the faint scent of burned metal filled the air. The ship had clearly taken damage, but how much he did not yet know. He turned back to the strange figure beside him. She lay on a stasis bed similar to his own, though it looked cracked and malfunctioning with sparks flickering at its base. For a moment, he wondered if this was a dream brought on by some malfunction of the stasis system. But the steady rise and fall of her chest, the way her silver skin caught the failing light, was too real to dismiss. Daniel's first instinct was to back away, to put distance between himself and the unknown being. Yet something stopped him. She looked fragile in her rest, as though she too had suffered. He leaned closer, studying her carefully. Her features were strange, but there was a softness to her expression that reminded him of calm oceans on Earth. His memory struggled to catch up. The last thing he recalled was preparing for a routine long-haul survey mission near the edge of human-mapped space. There had been a sudden alarm, a violent shake through the ship, and then darkness. If he had been in stasis all this time, what had happened? And more importantly, who was this alien woman, and why was she here with him? A low beeping sound pulled his attention away. The ship's system tried to come online, but most of the display screens flickered with static. He pressed a few keys on the nearest console, only to find that the data logs were corrupted. Still, he managed to catch fragments of information. Power reserves were low. Life support was damaged. The ship had drifted far from its last known coordinates. And then there was one more entry, an addition to the passenger list. The system listed one unknown life form placed in stasis approximately the same time his pod had activated. The details were incomplete, but it confirmed what he already saw with his own eyes. He sat down on the edge of his bed, running a hand through his messy hair. His mind filled with questions. How had she ended up here? Did her people put her aboard his ship? Or had his own crewmates done so before everything went dark? More importantly, was she dangerous? As if sensing his thoughts, the alien woman stirred. Her fingers twitched slightly, the glowing lines across her arms flickering faster. Daniel tensed every muscle in his body, ready for movement, though he had no weapon, no real plan. He simply waited. Her eyes opened slowly, revealing irises unlike any human's. They were a deep shade of blue, almost like liquid crystal, with faint light shimmering inside them. She looked around in confusion, much as he had moments earlier, then her gaze settled on him. For a brief moment, silence filled the room. Two beings from two worlds staring at one another with equal parts fear and curiosity. Daniel swallowed hard. He wanted to speak, to say something that might ease the tension, but his throat felt dry. Instead, he gave a small, uncertain nod, as if greeting a stranger on a quiet street. To his surprise, she tilted her head slightly, as though mimicking the gesture. Her lips parted, and a series of soft musical sounds escaped her mouth. The tones rose and fell like a song, but Daniel could not understand a word. She paused, as if realizing the failure of communication, then glanced toward the nearby console. Reaching out with surprising steadiness, she tapped a few keys, her fingers moving as though she already understood the human interface. The translation system, broken and weak, stuttered to life. Static filled the air, then a rough, mechanical voice repeated after her. The words were broken, slow, yet enough for Daniel to understand. "You, human?" the voice translated. Daniel blinked, his heart racing again. "Yes," he answered, his voice hoarse. The alien woman studied him carefully. Her glowing lines dimmed slightly, and she let out a sound that might have been a sigh. She closed her eyes for a moment before speaking again. "Safe. With me," the translator said. Daniel could not tell if it was a promise or a warning, but as he sat in the failing chamber of a dying ship, staring at the alien woman who had appeared beside him, he knew one thing for certain: his life had changed forever. Daniel sat still, his body tense while the alien woman slowly sat up on her stasis bed. The faint glow across her arms pulsed in rhythm with her movements, like soft waves of light beneath her skin. She looked around the chamber with sharp eyes, scanning the broken walls, the sparks from damaged panels and the dim light above. Her gaze finally returned to him, studying him as carefully as he studied her. For a long moment, neither moved. The ship groaned faintly, metal creaking as if protesting against its own weight. Daniel realized that if he wanted to survive, silence would not help. He cleared his throat. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low and cautious. She tilted her head slightly as if testing the meaning of his words. Her lips moved again, producing that strange melodic speech, but the translator device nearby struggled, spitting out broken sounds before forming a sentence. "Lysera," it said in its rough, mechanical voice. "I am Lysera," Daniel repeated the name quietly. Lysera. It felt strange on his tongue, but not unpleasant. He pointed to himself. "Daniel." Her glowing eyes softened, and she nodded. The translator worked again. "Daniel." "Human?" "Yes," he replied, though the word felt too small for what she might be asking. He wasn't sure if she meant his name or his species. The silence stretched between them again, heavy but not hostile. Lysera moved her hand slowly, touching the broken surface of her stasis pod. She traced the crack in its glass-like cover, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke again, her voice carrying through the translator. "Your ship. Broken life support." "Weak," Daniel frowned. He already knew that much, but hearing it from her made the situation heavier. "Can you fix it?" he asked, unsure if she could even understand the question. She blinked, then moved her glowing hand to the nearest console. When her fingers touched the metal, the flickering light steadied for a moment, as if her body itself carried some form of energy. She pressed several keys with surprising accuracy. Daniel leaned closer, amazed that she could interact with human systems so easily. The display showed a clearer warning. Power at 20%. Oxygen limited, engines offline. Lysera's eyes narrowed slightly. She looked at him, then spoke through the translator again. "I help. You help too, together." Daniel hesitated. He still didn't know if he could trust her, but the alternative was clear. Without cooperation, both of them would die on this drifting wreck. He nodded slowly. "All right, together." A faint smile touched her lips, small, cautious, but real. Then she stood, her movement graceful and fluid, though she swayed slightly as if her strength had not fully returned. Daniel instinctively stepped closer, ready to catch her if she fell, but she steadied herself with one hand on the wall. Her glowing lines pulsed faster, and she drew in a slow breath before speaking again. "First and power." Without power, all end. Daniel understood. He guided her out of the stasis chamber, the two of them moving through narrow corridors filled with smoke and faint sparks. The ship was quiet, too quiet. Daniel remembered how it used to sound, the constant hum of engines, the soft chatter of crew members. Now it was only broken metal and silence. They reached the engine bay, where half the panels hung loose and several wires dangled like vines. Daniel crouched beside the main control unit, shaking his head. "It's a mess," he muttered. Lysera knelt beside him, her glowing fingers brushing the wires gently. Where her hand touched, the sparks dimmed, almost calmed. She looked at him and spoke. "You fix metal, I guide energy." Daniel stared for a moment before realizing what she meant. He reached into the mess of wires, his hands moving with the practiced skill of a mechanic. He reconnected broken circuits, patched torn lines, and secured loose panels. All the while, Lysera pressed her palms against the control unit, her body sending a faint pulse of energy through the system. Slowly, lights began to return to life. The hum of machinery filled the air again, weak but steady. Daniel allowed himself a small breath of relief. The translator caught Lysera's words. "Good. Human hands. Strong." Daniel almost laughed at the odd praise. "And yours," he said, glancing at her glowing arms, "are something else." For the first time, Lysera gave a soft laugh, musical like the chime of glass bells. It was brief, but it eased some of the tension between them. Hours passed as they worked together, patching systems and rerouting power. Daniel grew more aware of her presence, the way she moved with precision, the calm determination in her crystal blue eyes. She was unlike anyone he had ever known, yet strangely familiar in her will to survive. When they finally managed to stabilize the core systems, Daniel collapsed onto the floor, exhausted. Lizra sat beside him, her glowing lines dimming as though her energy had been drained. Not safe. Yet, she said through the translator, but alive. Daniel leaned his head back against the wall, closing his eyes. Alive is good, he murmured. Silence filled the room, but this time it was not heavy. It was the silence of two survivors resting after saving their fragile hope. Before sleep took him, Daniel glanced at Lysera again. She sat with her hands folded, eyes half closed, her silver skin reflecting the soft light of the repaired console. He realized then that whatever she was not his enemy. At least not yet. And in the dark, broken ship drifting among the stars, Daniel understood something else. He was no longer alone. Daniel woke to the sound of metal groaning as the ship shifted slightly in the void. His body ached from exhaustion, but at least he was breathing easier now. The repairs he and Lysera had made the previous day kept the life support stable. The air still carried a faint metallic taste, but it was enough to survive. When he opened his eyes, he saw Lysera sitting across the room, her legs folded beneath her, eyes closed in silence. The glowing lines on her arms pulsed softly, like waves rolling against an unseen shore. She almost looked as though she were meditating. For a moment, Daniel just watched her. It was still difficult for his mind to accept what his eyes saw. An alien woman sitting inside his ship, calm and steady, as though she belonged there. Part of him wanted to ask 100 questions, yet another part of him hesitated. He didn't want to break the fragile balance between them. Finally, she opened her eyes. The crystal blue glow inside them met his gaze. "Awake," the translator repeated in its broken voice. Daniel rubbed his eyes and nodded. "Yeah, awake." Lysera stood, moving with quiet grace, and gestured toward the console. The screen displayed a warning. Power reserve still low, though stabilized. Engines offline. Communications array damaged. The ship was alive, but barely. "We need more," she said through the translator. "Not enough to move. Not enough to call." Daniel frowned. "Then we fix it." She tilted her head slightly, then gave a small nod. Together they left the room and moved through the ship's narrow corridors. Many doors were sealed, others bent from the earlier damage. Daniel carried a small toolkit he had managed to recover, while Lysera used her glowing hands to light their path. They entered the communications bay. The place was a mess of shattered panels and dangling wires. Daniel crouched low, inspecting the damage. "It'll take time," he muttered. Lysera joined him, studying the broken systems with an expression that was both curious and calculating. She touched one of the cracked panels, and for a moment, the screen flickered faintly to life. Then it died again. She turned to him. "Your ship? Fragile, but clever." Daniel gave a half smile. "That's humans. Fragile, but we figure things out." Her gaze lingered on him as though she were trying to understand something deeper. Then she began to help him, pulling wires aside while he patched them, holding circuits steady while he used his tools. Though she didn't know the technology, she seemed to learn quickly, watching carefully and copying his methods when she could. Hours passed. The hum of the ship felt steadier now, but the air grew warmer as they worked, a sign the cooling systems were straining. Sweat ran down Daniel's forehead, and he caught Lysera watching him again. "You continue," she said through the translator. "Even when hard." Daniel shrugged, wiping his brow. "That's what we do. We keep going." Lysera looked at him for a long moment before nodding. "Strange, my people stop when weak. You do not." Her words stayed in his mind. He realized she wasn't simply curious, she was studying him, learning about humans as much as she was helping repair the ship. By the time they managed to bring partial power to the communications array, both of them were exhausted. Daniel sat back on the floor, breathing heavily. The console gave off a faint glow, weak but working. "We might reach someone," he said, though doubt hung in his voice. "If the signal can travel far enough." Lysera touched the console gently, her glowing fingers pressing against its surface. "Try," the translator said. Daniel activated the system. Static filled the air, followed by a faint pulse as the ship attempted to broadcast. He tried to send a simple distress call, repeating coordinates and damage status. The system sputtered, flickered, then fell silent again. No answer, he muttered. Lysera's face remained calm, but her eyes held something else, something she wasn't saying. Daniel caught it immediately. "You know something," he said. She hesitated. The glow across her arms dimmed slightly. Then she spoke slowly, her voice carrying weight. "My people hear this. They come." Daniel's chest tightened. "Your people?" She nodded. "I was a soldier, mission to watch humans, to learn, but I stopped. I left." Her eyes lowered slightly. "They not forgive." Daniel stared at her, his mind racing. So she wasn't just some traveler who happened to end up here. She had been sent to watch humans, maybe even judge them. And if her people heard the signal, they would come. Not as rescuers, but as hunters. He clenched his fists, the air suddenly colder despite the heat of the ship. "Then we need to be ready." Lysera looked at him, her expression unreadable. The translator spoke her words softly. "You still trust me?" Knowing this, Daniel met her eyes. He thought about her laughter, her help, her calm presence in the chaos. She could have left him to die when she first woke, but she hadn't. She had chosen to stay. "Yes," he said firmly. "I trust you." For the first time, Lysera's eyes softened with something that looked almost human. She gave a small nod, her glowing arms pulsing faintly brighter. The two of them sat in silence, the broken ship groaning around them, knowing the future held danger. But at least for now, they faced it together. Daniel sat quietly in the half-lit chamber, his mind racing with what Lysera had revealed. The soft hum of the repaired systems filled the silence, but it did little to calm the storm inside him. She was not just an alien survivor who had ended up here by accident. She had once been sent to watch his kind. A soldier, a spy, someone trusted by her empire to observe humanity. He stared at her, trying to read the expression on her silver features. Her glowing arms rested against her knees as she sat with calm stillness. Yet her eyes betrayed something more. Regret, perhaps, or hesitation. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "You were sent to watch us, why?" Lysera looked at him, her crystal blue eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The translator carried her voice, slow and broken. "Humans grow fast. Too fast. My people fear." Daniel frowned. "Fear us? We're not a threat to anyone." Lysera shook her head gently. "Not now. But soon. You change stars. You fight each other, yet survive. My people think one day you will fight all." Her words settled heavily on Daniel's shoulders. He wanted to deny it, to say she was wrong, but part of him knew the truth. Humanity had always grown through struggle. They had spread across worlds in only a few generations. To an ancient alien empire that might look dangerous, and you? He asked carefully. "Do you think the same?" Lysera lowered her gaze. The glowing lines across her skin dimmed. "I was soldier. I believed, but I saw humans. I watched. You are not simple. You are fragile, but strong inside." I began to question. Daniel leaned forward. "So you left?" "Yes," she said softly. "I left. I did not want to fight. I did not want to see humans destroyed, my people. Do not forgive this. If they find me, they take me back. If they find you, they end you." The silence after her words felt heavier than before. Daniel pressed his hands against his face, breathing slowly. The situation had grown far more dangerous than he imagined. Sending that distress signal might not just bring help. It might bring her people, the very ones who wanted humans watched or eliminated. He dropped his hands and looked at her again. "So what happens if they come here?" Lysera's eyes met his. "We hide, or we fight, but this ship..." "Weak," Daniel let out a humorless laugh. "Then we'll need more than a weak ship." For a moment, neither spoke. The weight of the galaxy seemed to press down on both of them. Finally, Lysera stood and moved toward one of the side panels, touching it gently. "There is still time. We prepare. I teach you what I know. You teach me what you do." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Teach each other?" "Yes," she said simply. "Together, we survive." So began a strange exchange between them. Lysera showed him how she could sense energy flows, how the glowing patterns across her skin connected to something within her biology that allowed her to channel power. she demonstrated by running her fingers across broken circuits, lighting them just enough for him to see their structure. Daniel, in return, explained how human machines worked, how fragile wires and stubborn metal could be fixed with simple tools and patience. She listened carefully, asking questions in her broken translated words, and he answered with as much clarity as he could. Slowly, their teamwork grew smoother. Daniel no longer thought of her as a stranger on his ship. She was becoming a partner. Still, doubt lingered in the back of his mind. She had once been sent to watch his kind. Even now, could he be certain she would not betray him if her people arrived? The thought haunted him, but when he looked at her, when he saw the quiet determination in her glowing eyes, he pushed the doubt aside. Trust was all they had left. Days passed in this rhythm of survival and learning. The ship remained damaged but stable. Oxygen levels held steady, and food supplies, though limited, were enough for now. Daniel found himself speaking more to Lizera, even when the translator struggled. Sometimes they used simple gestures or expressions, and to his surprise, she often understood. One evening, while they worked to strengthen the communication system again, Daniel asked a question that had been burning in his mind. "Why tell me the truth? You could have hidden it." Lizera looked at him, silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice carrying through the translator like a quiet echo. "Because you trust me, and I trust you." Daniel felt something stir inside him at her words. It was not just survival binding them anymore. It was something deeper, something built on honesty in the face of danger. But before he could respond, an alarm blared. The console flashed red, and the screen displayed an incoming signal. Lizera froze, her glowing lines pulsing faster in alarm. Daniel rushed to the console. The signal was strong, far stronger than anything his damaged system could create. A ship was nearby, large, powerful, and closing fast. Lizera's voice broke the silence, heavy with dread. "They found us." Daniel's chest tightened. He didn't need to ask who they were. Her people, the very ones who feared humans, had come. He looked at Lizera, who stood with clenched fists, her glowing skin shining brighter than ever before. There was no fear in her eyes now, only resolve. And in that moment, Daniel understood. The real test had begun. The warning lights flashed across the console, painting the room in harsh red streaks. Daniel's heart raced as he stared at the display. A large ship, far bigger and faster than his own, was closing in on them. The hull shook slightly with every warning pulse, as if the tiny human vessel sensed its own weakness. Lizera stepped beside him, her glowing arms casting silver light over the damaged room. She moved with precision, her gaze locked on the approaching threat. "They know we are here," she said, her voice steady through the translator, though her body braced for impact. Daniel swallowed hard. "Then we fight?" She shook her head. "Not yet. We survive first. They stronger." Daniel glanced at the ship's systems. Power was low, weapons offline, communications barely functional. They had no choice. If they stayed and did nothing, the enemy would destroy the ship without effort. "Okay," Daniel said, determination firming his voice. "Then we survive, and we make them pay for every second they waste." Lizera's eyes narrowed, the glowing lines across her arms pulsing faster. "Good, quick thinking. Human." Together they moved through the ship, preparing what defenses they could. Daniel patched some panels in the engine room, creating makeshift barriers while Lizera used her alien abilities to redirect energy flows, sending faint pulses of light through the circuits. The hum of the ship grew stronger as power returned, though still limited. Daniel worked quickly, improvising. He rigged electrical traps along the main corridors, bare wires laid carefully in a pattern to deliver shocks when triggered. He reinforced doors with metal panels torn from damaged sections. Lizera studied him quietly, occasionally guiding him with subtle gestures. "They will board," she said. "Prepare traps." Set quickly, Daniel nodded. The thought of aliens boarding his ship was terrifying, yet something inside him stirred, a strange, fierce determination. He had survived countless simulations, countless drills, but this was real. This was life or death, and he refused to die without a fight. Hours passed in tense silence. The ship's hull shuddered with the approach of the enemy vessel. Through the observation window, Daniel could see it, a sleek, dark silhouette gliding in space like a predator stalking its prey. He felt a shiver run down his spine, but he pushed it aside. Fear was a tool, not a cage. Then with a low vibration, the ship docked, or rather latched onto their vessel. The hull rattled violently as magnetic clamps secured the enemy to their side. Daniel's chest tightened. "They're here," he said softly. Lysera's glow intensified and she moved to stand beside him. "Do not panic. Use mind and speed together." Daniel took a deep breath and nodded. The first boarders came through a weakly sealed airlock. Shadows moved in the red light. Tall and imposing figures, their forms alien but not like Lysera. Their movements were quick and precise like trained soldiers. Daniel activated the electrical trap he had prepared. Sparks flew and one of the boarders froze mid-step, jerking back in shock. Lysera moved like liquid, placing her hands on the corridor walls. A surge of alien energy ran along the metal floor, creating a barrier that forced the invaders back. Daniel ducked behind a panel, gripping a tool as a weapon. "Lysera, I need your help to push them further." She nodded, stepping beside him. Together. Stronger than fear. The fight was chaotic, but their teamwork proved effective. Daniel used his human ingenuity to improvise, setting traps in ways the aliens didn't anticipate. Lysera's alien abilities gave them an edge, sending pulses of energy down hallways and temporarily disabling the invaders' tech. Each time one breached a section, they were pushed back. Daniel realized something incredible. Humans were unpredictable. Lysera's people, trained to anticipate everything, would find this impossible to counter. His mind, fueled by instinct and necessity, became as dangerous as any alien weapon, but the battle was not without cost. One of the invaders managed to breach the engine room, moving with terrifying speed. Lysera stepped forward, placing herself between it and Daniel. A pulse of energy shot from her hands, and the alien was thrown back, stunned. She stumbled slightly, one hand glowing brighter than the other, her energy drained from repeated use. Daniel ran to her side. "Are you okay?" he asked, fear cutting through his adrenaline. She nodded, though she breathed heavily. Strong enough. But human. You help too." He gritted his teeth and moved with renewed purpose. Together they funneled the boarders into a corridor filled with traps and powered barriers. One by one, the invaders were slowed, shocked, or forced back. The combination of human cunning and alien power was unlike anything the enemy expected. Finally, after what felt like endless minutes, the invaders retreated back to their ship. The magnetic clamps released and the enemy vessel drifted away, leaving Daniel's damaged ship intact, though barely. Daniel slumped against a panel, breathing hard. His hands shook, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. Lysera knelt beside him, placing a glowing hand on his shoulder. "Survived," she said softly. "Together. Strong." Daniel looked at her, a mixture of exhaustion and admiration on his face. "Yeah," he replied. "Stronger than they expected." For the first time since waking, he allowed himself a small smile. In the heart of danger, he had discovered something extraordinary. Humans were unpredictable, clever, and relentless. And with Lysera at his side, they were more than just survivors. They were a force the galaxy would have to reckon with. But deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. The enemy would return stronger and smarter. And when they did, Daniel and Lysera would need more than traps and energy pulses to survive. They would need every ounce of trust, every ounce of human ingenuity, and every ounce of courage they could muster. The ship was quiet now, except for the faint hum of the repaired systems. Daniel leaned against a panel, sweat still drying on his brow. His muscles ached, but he was alive. Lysera stood near the observation window, her glowing arms dimmed to a soft pulse, her gaze fixed on the stars outside. Daniel noticed her movements had slowed, a slight limp in her step that hadn't been there before. She had pushed herself hard to protect him, using more energy than he realized. The thought made his stomach tighten. She had risked everything, not because she was ordered to, but to keep him safe. "Lysera," he said gently, "are you hurt?" She shook her head, but her eyes gave her away. "Minor. Tired. Need rest soon." Daniel stepped closer, his hands hovering uncertainly. He wanted to help, but he wasn't sure how. She had saved him countless times today. It felt strange to be the one in a position to act. "You're not just tired," he said. "You've been hurt protecting me." She looked at him, her eyes flickering with faint concern. Okay, I survive." Daniel's chest tightened. He refused to let her suffer silently. He guided her gently to the medical bay, using the little equipment that survived the earlier damage. Lizera allowed him to move her without resistance, though she remained quiet, observing him with those glowing blue eyes. "You've never had someone trust you like this before," Daniel said softly as he worked, cleaning minor wounds and stabilizing her energy. She blinked, a small, almost imperceptible glow passing through her lines. "No, not like this, my people. Obedience, not trust." Daniel's hands paused. He looked into her eyes. "Then maybe it's time you learn the difference." She said nothing, but the faint pulse of her arms seemed to agree. As he patched a minor tear in her clothing and checked her energy levels, Daniel realized something important. Humans might be fragile, but they had something unique. Loyalty, courage, and a willingness to risk themselves for others. Lizera had seen it firsthand. He wanted her to understand it fully. "Lizera," he said, lowering his voice, "I don't care if your people come back. I won't let anything happen to you, not now, not ever." She studied him for a long moment, the translator clicking softly. "Human, you are strange." "My people never care like this," Daniel shrugged. "We're strange sometimes, but when it matters, we do." Her glowing arms dimmed slightly, a sign of exhaustion, but she reached out and touched his hand. It was brief, almost shy, yet it held weight. The gesture spoke of trust, of connection, of mutual understanding that transcended language or species. Then, a warning siren blared through the ship. Daniel jumped, grabbing the console. Lizera was already on her feet, steady despite her weakened state. Another enemy vessel was approaching, stronger, faster, clearly searching for them. "We need to move," she said, voice steady despite the weariness. "They coming back." Daniel nodded, helping her to the command center. He could feel her fatigue, the strain of her alien body pushing beyond its limits, yet she moved with determination. He realized she had been testing him, observing if he would falter under pressure, and he had not. The enemy ship appeared in the viewport, its dark silhouette growing larger by the second. Daniel gritted his teeth. "We can't run," he said. "We have to fight smart." Lysera touched his shoulder, the glow from her hand warming him. "Together. Strategy. You, human thinking. Me, energy. We, strong." Daniel smiled faintly, adrenaline sharpening his senses. He adjusted the traps he had set earlier and rerouted power to the few defensive systems remaining. Lysera moved through the corridors, using her abilities to reinforce barriers and redirect energy pulses. The rhythm of their teamwork was seamless, human ingenuity and alien skill combined in perfect harmony. When the first boarders entered, Lysera stepped forward, her glowing arms flaring with energy. A pulse shot out, knocking them back and buying Daniel time to lead another group into a trap. They fought with precision, every move calculated, every pulse measured. Yet Daniel never let go of her side, guiding her when her energy faltered, supporting her when she stumbled. After what felt like endless minutes, the boarders retreated, damaged and forced to return to their ship. Daniel slumped to the floor, exhausted, his chest heaving. Lysera staggered beside him, leaning heavily on one hand, her glow dim and flickering. "You survived," she said softly, almost in awe. Daniel reached out, gripping her hand firmly. "No," he corrected. "We survived. Together." She met his gaze, a faint pulse of energy radiating warmth from her skin. "Human loyalty. Strong," the translator said. Daniel smiled, leaning back against the panel. For the first time, he felt the weight of the day lift slightly. They had faced overwhelming odds, yet they had survived. Not because of weapons, not because of luck, but because they trusted one another. And in that trust, Daniel realized something profound. Humans might be fragile in body, but their courage, their loyalty, their unwillingness to abandon those they care about, that was strength. Real strength. Lysera, once a soldier conditioned for obedience, now understood it too. And together they had become more than survivor and alien. They had become a team the galaxy would have to respect. For Daniel, the knowledge was comforting. No matter what came next, he would not face it alone, and that alone made all the difference. Command center, their bodies still recovering from the battle. The enemy ship had retreated, but the tension lingered like a shadow over the ship. Every hum, every vibration of the vessel reminded them of how fragile their survival had been. Daniel looked at Lysera, who sat with her glowing arms dimmed but steady. Her eyes, bright and crystal blue, scanned the console for any signs of danger. "They'll come back," she said softly through the translator. "Stronger, smarter, they..." Hunt, Daniel nodded. Then we'll have to be ready, not just to survive, but to outsmart them. Lysra studied him for a moment. Your human thinking? Different, clever, dangerous, together. Stronger. Daniel smiled faintly. The thought of facing her people, creatures so advanced and trained, would terrify most humans. Yet somehow he felt calm. They had fought side by side before. They had survived. They had learned from each other. They spent the next few hours reinforcing the ship. Daniel patched broken circuits, strengthened doors, and adjusted the traps they had set. Lysra moved alongside him, using her alien abilities to redirect energy, subtly enhancing the systems to amplify the effect of human engineering. Every movement between them felt seamless. They had become a single force, a combination of instinct, intelligence, and alien precision. When the enemy vessel returned, it approached more cautiously, scanning and searching for weaknesses. Daniel and Lysra had anticipated this. They lured the ship close enough to trigger their improvised traps while keeping their own systems powered, just enough to manipulate the battlefield. The first wave of boarders stepped aboard, confident and trained. Daniel activated the electrical traps, sending sparks flying and forcing the invaders to halt. Lysra moved swiftly, energy surging through her hands, creating barriers and pushing the boarders back. Every move was calculated, every pulse of energy precise. The alien soldiers were skilled, but Daniel's unpredictability and Lysra's power made them falter. One of the lead invaders tried to force a path toward the command center, but Daniel anticipated it. He redirected a surge of energy through a corridor, momentarily stunning the alien and buying precious time. Lysra followed his lead, enhancing the effect, sending the boarder crashing into a reinforced door. They fought like this for what felt like hours. Each time the invaders advanced, Daniel used ingenuity to turn the environment against them. Loose panels became obstacles, wiring traps became hazards, and corridors led the boarders into dead ends. Lysra's energy pulses amplified the effect, ensuring no one could reach them easily. Finally, the enemy vessel began to retreat. Their boarding party was damaged, demoralized, and forced to pull back. The ship detached from Daniel's fragile vessel, drifting into the void. Daniel slumped to the floor, exhaustion washing over him. Lysra knelt beside him, her glowing arms pulsing faintly, her breathing steady but slow. We survived, she said softly. No, Daniel corrected, a smile tugging at his lips. We outsmarted them, together. She looked at him, something almost human in her gaze. Humans, different, stronger than expected. You show me loyalty or courage. Daniel nodded, realizing the truth in her words. Humanity's strength was not just in technology or numbers. It was in determination, in courage, in loyalty to one another. Lysra had seen that firsthand, and it had changed her view of the species she had once been sent to judge. He extended a hand toward her. She placed her glowing hand in his. The gesture was simple, yet it carried weight. Trust, respect, and a bond forged in life and danger. Where do we go now? Daniel asked. The ship is still weak. They might return. Lysra's eyes flickered as she considered. We leave, find, safe place, repair, learn together, human and me, alliance, Daniel smiled. For the first time since waking on this damaged ship, he felt hope. Hope that they could survive not just this battle, but whatever else awaited in the vastness of space. The stars stretched on outside, silent witnesses to their small victory. Daniel realized then that survival was only the beginning. With Lysra at his side, he could face any challenge, any enemy. Humans were capable of great things, and perhaps with allies like Lysra, they could one day change the galaxy in ways even the most powerful civilizations could not predict. As the ship drifted toward an uncertain future, Daniel and Lysra worked side by side, planning their next move. Repairs would be made, strategy would be prepared. But more than that, a new bond had formed, a bond of trust, courage, and understanding that crossed species, worlds, and expectations. And in the quiet of the ship, floating through the endless stars, Daniel knew that he was no longer alone. Humanity had found a friend among the stars, and together they would face whatever the universe threw at them. They had survived, they had fought, and they had won. But most importantly, they had become a team, a human and an alien, united not by orders or duty, but by choice, loyalty, and trust. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown dangers, But for the first time, Daniel felt ready. He had Lizera by his side, and together they were unstoppable.